afternoon. I'm Dr. Ronald Stevens, Assistant Professor of Anthropology and Geography and African American and African Studies at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Today is September the 6th, 2002, and it's approximately 1 o'clock p.m. And we're here at the television station on the campus of the University of Nebraska, Omaha, speaking with one of the three Tuskegee Airmen in Nebraska, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Adams. How are you doing today, Lieutenant?
Real good.
Very good. I'd like to start this interview off with some information about your background. And I think it's appropriate to start with Greenville, South Carolina, where you were born. And I was wondering if you could tell me something about your experiences growing up there in Greenville.
Oh, it was great. I went to school there. My sisters were teaching in the public school system there, and my daddy was a janitor of one of the schools there in Greenville, South Carolina, and thus giving a great desire for everybody in the family to get an education. And we didn't have babysitters as such. So when my sisters all had to go to school, my mother wasn't taking, they would take me to school with them. So when I was 3 years old, I was in second grade.
Interesting.
Because I was taking to school, they was teaching. And they would just take me and sit me in the class, and I'd run all over the school from class to class. And so consequently, I got ahead in most of the studies there. And graduating from high school in 1938, I was 17 years old, I imagine, somewhere along in there. And I wanted to go to college. And we didn't have any money. And that's when the NYA came out, National Youth Association for students to go to school, which was pushed by Ms. Eleanor Roosevelt, who would come down through the South. And she was a great one for promoting low-income people and going to school and getting an education, getting them farther in the job reserve. I'm trying to say the thing, and a job trend to learn to make money. And she would take a number of blacks and low-income people and take them back north and see that they get jobs and could make more money. And so she was real instrumental in getting people going to school. And so basically, my daddy, being just a janitor of school, he wanted us all to have an education. And my two sisters teaching, my brothers graduated from college and was teaching. And there was only a small family, there was only 11 of us.
Only?
Only 11. And only 11 got a college degree. We went to college with no money, but we went to college and we worked our way through. When I came along, being the last one, the baby, I had a real hard time in trying to make financial ends meet. There was no money to be had around, and I used to hand-me-down clothes from my brothers ahead of me. And I was really happy when I graduated and got my first job teaching at Voorhees Junior College in Denmark, South Carolina. I was teaching school there, and the principal came through and saw me teaching, and the teachers at that time helped with any projects that came out for students to do for the state or for the government. And along at that time was when President Roosevelt started the draft. And starting the draft, any young man reaching the age of 20 was to serve 2 years in the military. And so we had to sign up and get a pledge draft card. And so in assisting the students of Denmark get their get registered. And so the principal of the school come along and find I had went over and I had registered with one of the other teachers. And he saw it and he said, why, Mr. Adams? You're only 19 years old. Well, your students are older than you. And I didn't say anymore, but I knew from that point on that I'd better look for a job, because I don't think he intended on hiring me again, because all the girls and everybody and the students that I was teaching was older than 19. And I graduated from college at 19. In fact, I spent 3 years in college instead of 4. The president of the college, knowing my family had gone through and knowing we didn't have any money, said that I could take as many credit hours as I could handle as long as I kept the B average. And I wanted to be average because I wanted to be in the fraternity. Mm-hmm. And so being a good Omega man in fraternity, I maintained this B average. And in 3 years, I was out of that college. I was taking 25 credit hours my senior year, that last semester. And along at this time, it came out after a lot of conniving, excuse me, Ms. Eleanor Roosevelt worked along with the other senators and congressmen in getting a program started where they would train black pilots. And and then there I saw that black pilots, a pilot in cadets, was going to be paid $75 a month, where the drafted soldiers who were being drafted in the service would get $21 a month. Well, immediately I knew what I wanted. Not necessarily being a pilot, I wanted $75 a month. And I didn't care how it come to get. If I was going to service, I wanted some money, because I had made such little money during my growing up. I picked up this cold, and I don't know where it is.
Strange things.
But I certainly like to give it back the way it comes from. And then, having worked with a white family for many years there in Greenville, South Carolina, and one of his sons, who was about my age, we grew up together, and whatever he did, I wanted to do it just as well. And he went to Clemson University, and he began to take pilot training. And he was flying, and he had an accident, and he got killed. And his daddy wanted to know, says, now, Paul, that Otis is dead, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to fly too. I'm going to fly. And quite naturally, he says, he signed the application recommending me to go to pilot training. You had to have a college degree and get a recommendation from 4 or 5 other people of the community. And he was one. And I went off, took an exam to go into pilot training. And hung around there for about 6 months. And they called me back to take the test all over again, because they felt that I couldn't pass it again. And I did pass it. So at that time, I could see pretty good. I was seeing 2010 instead of 2020, out of 2010. In fact, I could see around the corner. And so the doctors would say, and they kept examining to see if I could still see that well, and I did. And finally, Otis Stone, we used to call Mr. Stone at the time. It was always Mr. When a white got above 12 years old, he said Mr. to him. He was not just Otis, and Otis is Mr. But I grew up with him, and so he says, when are you going to pilot training? Didn't you pass? Yes, of course. And he says, what are they doing? I said, I don't really know. And so he called me. He's the owner of a clothing store. He'd come in, and I went in the store in the back with him. And he picked up the phone and he dialed. I imagine Washington, D.C., because I want to speak to President Roosevelt. And I didn't know who he was talking to, and he says, well, I want to tell you here that I don't understand why these Negroes, that was the expression they used when they said nigger, they said Negroes. I've been with me for all these years, and why he can't go to that flying training school like all those other Negroes from the North are going. And so I don't know what else the other comes, but that's all. He just, well, you go home. I want you to hear from them and let me know what happened. So I left. I don't know who he was talking to, but about a week later, I got a telegram from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Report to Tuskegee Flying School. There were no orders and nothing. I didn't know what orders were, the thing. And so Mr. Stone, what do I want to do? They said, you just take that down to the bus station and tell the man to give you a ticket to go to Tuskegee. I took it down there, and the guy said, you can't get a ticket on this. This has no orders for military. You can't go anywhere. So I said, well, I don't know. Just call Mr. Otis. Otis told me to come. So he called Otis Stone up the store. Otis Stone told him, says, you better look at that telegram. Yeah, I looked at it. He looked at it and saw Franklin down the road, and he gave me a ticket. And off I went to Tuskegee.
Interesting.
And well, shall we go on from there on, up the line?
Well, keep talking. And I'll go back and ask questions, but continue the story.
So then I was there, and classes started every 5 weeks. And every 5 weeks they started a different class. And I was there in the middle of classes. There was no class starting, so they gave me a job called KP, peeling potatoes and carrots and stuff, working in the kitchen. And so that I did my job all day long. I would go to the kitchen and work there. And KP, they called it, washing pots and pans until the next class. So, and about a week after I was there, I got a stack of papers. They were signed by S.J. Hunter, General from Washington, D.C., and a letter stating, we apologize for you not having your orders, but here's your orders, and he gave me a serial number. And my serial number, I've forgotten what it is right off the hand right now. But he said, the number that you have for a serial number belongs to somebody else. Because evidently Roosevelt just picked the number up and wrote it on the telegram. And it gave me a new serial number. And I would start with the next class in the next week when it started. That's when my pilot training started. I started at Moulton Field under great Chief Anderson was the director of training at Moulton Field. He was civilian, and also as a civilian instructor there, Daniel C. James, we call him Chappie, was all civilian. He was an instructor at this training program at Tuskegee at Moulton Field. And Moulton Field, by the way, is still being reconstructed and rebuilt now. They're building a new hangar there, just down there 3 weeks ago. It's still in operation. It was a CTP, Civilian Training Program. We used to call them now CAPs, Civilian Air Patrol Program, now they call them. But anyway, there were 5 other colleges that had this program going on. Hampton University, A&T, and Virginia Union, Howard University, and Tuskegee University in Alabama. And they were trying to find a place to start the training for black pilots. And they wanted to get one close to where there was a base, big base in operation. And so they found that Tuskegee was the one that's closest to a big base because Maxwell Field was there in Montgomery, Alabama. So they picked Tuskegee for us to start out our first training. And then going to have a training program with the Tuskegee. We had 5 graduates already when I got there. The first class was 5 graduates. Benjamin O. Davis Jr. was one, Spanky Robinson, Span Watson, and Curtis. And I was thinking of the 5 of them that graduated in that 5 class, and they were the upperclassmen. And so I started my primary pre-flight, they call it, in the old PT-17 bi-wing, and I enjoyed that. And they says, well, how did you come to fly? I said, it don't make no difference to me. It's $75 a month. I'd fly anytime, fly a truck, if you got one. And so I did pretty good. I graduated from pre-flight. They go to basic training. That's where we find all white instructors. And some of them were pretty good at cussing. They called me different names. I don't remember ever being called by my name. They called me nigger, black boy, frog, dummy, monkey, anything that comes to their mind. They call you that name. And all you say was yes sir, no sir, and no excuse. And you had no rebuttal on all of that kind of stuff. And it was really rough, but having been born in South Carolina, it's kind of, not that I enjoyed it, I had it done before, so it was nothing new to me to be called out of my name, because I grew up with that, all in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. People talk about how bad Mississippi is. They don't know till they go to South Carolina how good Mississippi is, because South Carolina is one of the worst places there in prejudice, even today. And so then in getting into basic training, they had one big instructor there, white guy. He was about 6 feet 5, 6, big guy, Lundberg, and they would let the cadets line up, and then the instructor line out from them. They would pick, each instructor was to pick 5 people that they were going to teach. And I was one of Lundberg's, and Lundberg says he would never teach 5 blacks. His job wasn't down there to have that kind of a job. In fact, the white instructors were there, they thought it was punishment because they didn't want to be there in the first place. In fact, they didn't want to teach us in the first place, but it was assigned a job military-wise. And so Lundberg picked us 5, and the first day, Lundberg washed out 3, says, I'm not going to teach 2. And I had to be one he kept. And another one, Bailey, Punta Gorda, Florida. And I'll never forget that name because his name Punta Gorda, Florida, is where Bailey was from. And he was about 6 feet. And I got along real good with him because I was a little squirt there. I had to stretch to get my 5.5 feet tall because it was really rough. In fact, to fly, I had to carry pillars, 2 pillars. I had the pillars in the aircraft, and I sat on 2 pillars to be high enough to sit in there because I was so short. And they used to give me, here come old Adam with his pillars. When I would be struggling out to the airplane, I had to have my parachute on off and my 2 pillars on my arm, and I'd put them in the aircraft to raise up so I could see out. Well, I could see out now when you learn to fly, but when I was training, I needed all the advantages I could get. So I'd use those pillars so I could get up and see. I was more comfortable. So Lundberg said, make you feel good, give him those pillars. Lundberg, he was a big brute, and he would use his voice, and he would raise Cain with him. And see, they give me that somehow or another. I don't know what happened. I must have stepped on his foot right because he liked me. And he was there in my corner. He was protecting me from everything that's happened. And so I did pretty good in basic training at the BT-13. And it so happened that we had a young man there one of the pilot instructors in the BT basic BT station called Hawkins. His name was Hawkins. I can't forget that name because Hawkins was rough, and he didn't like blacks too well. And he would always get up with his speech, says, "Now let me tell you, that BT aircraft will sail like a kite. If it has trouble, don't try to turn back to the field. You just dive straight ahead and find a good spot to land. Don't try to turn back to come where it's safe." And so, because if you try to turn it, it's going to sail and scatter you all over the place. Well, a few weeks later, Hawkins tried to turn back, and BT scattered him all over the creation out there. And, we was trying to make an all-black outfit, both completely, that's for everything. Going to be black pilots, black mechanics, black doctors, black nurses, black lawyers, black preachers, everything would be black. So we had the hospital there, and all black doctors, black nurses, and so that's where they took old Gabe Hawkins. And took him up there, and he had to have blood transfusion. So they gave him some blood, but his wife said, "Don't you give my husband no black blood." But it was too late. They'd already given it to him to save the sucker's life. And he already had black blood in him. And she divorced him. Shortly after that, she said she wasn't gonna live with no man with black blood. And so Gabe now runs around, and so we teased him occasionally. We'd whisper to him, say, "Gabe, how's that black blood?" And he used to laugh. He got used to it. He found out he didn't die with it. He lived with that black blood. And so that's one thing I remember about Gabe Hawkins, and that black blood. And of course, the Red Cross would take blood from you, and we had to give blood by orders, I think military orders, that we were supposed to give blood ever so much if we could. And the non-white nurses would draw the black blood and dump it out the back. And so they didn't keep it, because they thought that black blood was black too, because they would dump the black blood out before they drew from us out. We found that out, but wasn't nothing we could do about that. They still want to find that black blood. I haven't seen it yet. I've been looking for it for 82 years now. I haven't seen it. But then I hit advanced training under a guy named Rathall. I remember Rathall. He was determined that I wasn't going to make it. So I went off in this old BT. It was an AT-6, and I got lost trying to find my way back. And I was flying over Andalusia, Alabama, down there, and I about to run out. I'd been gone a long time, so I was second around trying to find a spot to land. And so I saw this beautiful field down there, and if you're in the farmers, when it rains, and it rains on the plowed field, how smooth it makes the top surface, the crust on the top of the soil, and it looked beautiful, beautiful landing spot. And I said, I'll land in this field here. And so I went around, checked the wind, and the way we checked the wind, see what way the wind was blowing, the smoke coming out of the chimneys, and made my crosswind pattern, then my downwind pattern, come in and land nice. Land was soft and smooth. Oh, real good landing, soft. And in fact, it felt so good, I wanted to relax there. I sat there, and all of a sudden, the airplane began to raise up, and it raised up and complete, the tail hit, flipped right over, boom, upside down. And I was hanging upside down, and in this darn thing, and I was trying to call on my phone, but it leaned over on one wing, and I could crawl out. I crawled out, and I was trying to call people on the thing, and I couldn't get anybody. And then I looked. After a while, I saw a lot of people coming. And I knew there were no blacks down there, but they was all white. They was coming, and women and men. They was coming. Right now, I said, "Oh, hello," because I knew what happened when something happened to. And I had heard that the sheriff would take and put you in jail, put all the black cadets, they called them, and for trespassing in some farmer's yard. And if you go to jail, say, "Oh, this is it." But that run, and the women got there just in time. They says, "All you men, find out what he wants, find out what he wants." And these were women too. I said, "Oh my goodness, these women and men," but those women were telling those men what to do, made them move this and that. "What do you need?" And I told them I wanted to call back to the base. So she said, "Tell them, go call him on the phone, tell him what he wants." And so they called the base to tell him where I was, back Tuskegee. And she says, "This boy's hungry. His boy's hungry. Bring him a sandwich too." Oh my Christ! I didn't expect that. Here I am, wild down in Lucia, Alabama, and these people supposed to be real cutthroats. And yeah, they're gonna do this. They're gonna give me a sandwich, and it was really good. And so they called, and as they talked, Jim chit chat talk. Where was I? You boy, you gonna fly this airplane? You fly? How many of you all up there? And all this kind of chit chat. But we just went on for a while till then. So they sent this guy named Rathol, instructor, and another AT-6 to pick me up. So he come down and he was gonna land, and he circled around, find out the pilot and gonna land in this beautiful field that I had landed in. And I got out there and I waved my towel, wouldn't let him land. I got in front of him, and he would pull up and go around again, and he'd come around again, and he'd come in and gonna land again. I ran out there and waved him off and waved him off again. So a couple of men went out, and we waved him off, and finally he landed a big highway down south, down in Georgia, those straight highways, as far as you can see, and wide. He finally decided to land on the highway. So he landed on the highway, and he come on there and says, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" He started raising, came at me, and the woman said, "Don't you think to him, say, if you landed in that, you'd have been upside down like he is." And he said, He didn't give me any credit for that at all. But I had, so he walked around the airplane, and he looked around that thing, airplane, it was upside down, and the thing had turned up, because the horizontal stabilizer, the tail fin, it stuck straight up in the back, and the prop, it stood right up like that and kept it up off the ground and just leaned over. The wing was barely touching the ground, just leaned over like that, but they had plenty of room up there. Didn't hurt it. And he says, "Did you write the damage up?" I said, "Yes, sir." Well, let me see. He looked at it. He said, "Boy, you didn't write no damage." He said, "Well, I guess it's all right." And by the time, so he said, "Oh, shoot, look what you've done to this airplane." He reached up and hit the wing of the airplane and pulled it down, and the prop turned over. The prop, it just turned over one turn. And when it turned over, it crushed the whole canopy, just crushed. If I had been under there, I'd have been in it. So he said, "Now write your damage up." I said, "I didn't do that." He says, "What do you mean?" "Yes, you did." I said, "No, sir, I didn't do that." And that white woman said, "No, he didn't do that." And said, "What you gonna do?" He said, "You better write it down." I said, "No, sir." And of course, as I said, we was making an all-black outfit, so all of our MPs and mechanics and so forth were black. And that's who he brought, a big black sergeant come down there with him. And he had to stay out there, and he had to stay there with that airplane all night. And he couldn't leave that airplane till somebody come get it, so he had to bunk in there. And so he told me to get in the airplane. I got in the airplane, he flew me back to the base. "Now you go to the batteries." And so the next day, General McPherson, major at the time, called me in. "What's happened?" And Lundberg came over. Lundberg, this great instructor, I told you I liked me. And I told him what happened. He said, "Well, we'll work on that." So he got this letter from this lady and Lucia and this black sergeant and all, and they signed the fact that I didn't crush that airplane, that this guy Rathol did. But generally, he had no way of moving without it crushing. But I didn't do it. But deep down, maybe I did. but he got blamed for it. And So and he raised came with me so much. He says he's gonna get me. He had this eye on me. Wasn't gonna make it. And so Lundberg heard about it and went to General Parrish. Now General Parrish, that was the best man, white, green, yellow, blue, or black you ever want to meet. He was a white officer, Colonel Parrish, to all blacks down there. He was the best commander I've ever met in my life. And so he called me up there, and after talking to Lundberg, Lundberg said, you go up there, Colonel Parrish want to talk to you. And Colonel Parrish told me, he said, right in front of Rathol, said, now Rathol, you stay out of the airplane with this man. If he is flying the airplane, don't you get in there, but you can fly him. And so, but in other words, he was my instructor, but he couldn't judge me, but he couldn't be in the airplane that I was controlling. And so we went to gunnery. And so Rathol said, well, I'm not going to trust me to fly the gunnery. So some of the pilots flew their own airplane down there. It took about 8 or 10 of us down there, and it took about 6 planes with us so we could fly do our gunnery. And so Rathol had me flying with him. And then we got down there, he gave me my airplane, and when we fly, I flew his wing and flying around to do gunnery. We were doing our gunnery and ground target. Rathol go in first, and I would fall right behind. He had target number one, I had target number 2. And when we got back to base after our flying trip, all the airmen was out there, hey, rail and jumping, rail, you know, that. I had hit 98 out of 100, and Rathol hit about 20. And I got expert aerial gunner out of that. And everybody was bragging how great I was. And I had to shot the I sent the tracers through that dang thing. But at the time, I had nothing to lose. Everything was up. And of course, I had good crew chief. The guy had that thing tuned in just right. And told him, said, you just follow that scope. And so I had a darn good crew chief who set that airplane up, and that thing shot right through that target. And so we come from there and got back, and Rathol says, Colonel Parrish says, Rathol, you leave this man alone. He's going to graduate. I knew that about a week before term. So Parrish said it. They tell me I was going to graduate for a week before time. Shoot. Lundberg says, don't you stick your chest out, dummy. He's just talking. But I kept going. But anyway, it worked pretty good because there were 65 in my class, and we knew from the beginning that 18 was going to graduate. They had a quota. And so here we were. The day before graduation, 19 people. Somebody got to go. So we all went down there, and so they started picking them out, taking them up to test out, train them, they had to get rid of somebody. So they took out Hill, Ulysses S. Taylor, one of my classmates, had gone on cross country, and on his way back, he got lost, and he landed in a farmer's yard, and they put him in jail. He wasn't back. And Hill, he took him up, but his instructor got down on the ground and said, Hill, you washed him out and sent him on to the barracks. He was through. And that was down to 18, so what's he going to do with U.S. Taylor now, who's down there in jail? Oh, he going to graduate. He's 18. He's going to graduate 18, don't care what happened. So we went through our graduation the next day with left old Taylor down there in jail. Then they went and got him after we graduated. But Taylor was a darn good pilot, so was Hill. In fact, a lot of them were good pilots, but we knew it wasn't but 18 going to graduate. And so my wife, and it was my fiance then, my mother and my sisters, had come down to Tuskegee to see me graduate. So they was there.
And that was in 42 that you graduated?
43.
43?
43. Okay. April the 28th, 1943. August the 10th, 1942 is when I went in to cadet training. And so then next step to do was to go into the P-40 Warhawk, the big fighter, get training. Left 86, but we were second lieutenants then. We were strutting around, and I had gone home to Greenville. My second lieutenant bars on, my scarf, my cap broke down, and a leather jacket, shooting, walking down the street with my girlfriend, and the MP stopped me in the street. Said, "Well, what are you doing in that officer's uniform?" They didn't, no blacks supposed to be no officer. So they says, gonna haul me up, get in the Jeep, they're gonna take me back at the base, took me out there and looked at and the commander said, "Where's his orders?" And I had them in my pocket. They didn't actually see me, so he said, "You gotta take this man back, this is an officer." And then they began to stand through. "You mean we got a black officer in South Carolina?" Yes, and so that was embarrassing. But it happened to, I understand a number of other pilots went different places in their hometowns and had been stopped because they weren't supposed to have on an officer. They were impersonating an officer. And so back down there, Tuskegee, now I got to fly this thing P-40. You don't, no instructor go with you. You read all the instruments and you read the tech, and then you get out there and look at it and study it. But you take it off by yourself, no instructor go with you. So I'd go out there and look at all those things, looking at them, and I knew it. I had to learn that thing, how to fly this thing with. I was sitting there, and you sit in there for an hour, then you get up and go to the back. You think about it a while. And I was sitting there, and then by that, so I saw my instructor come out to the aircraft where I was, and he come out there and he looked up there and saw me, and I was getting ready. He said, "Oh, don't get out. Take it off and come back in an hour." All the air went out of me. You're gonna take off and come back in an hour. I said, "I didn't tell you I was ready." He didn't. He said, "Take off and come back in an hour." The Lundberger told him to send me off, and so I had to, the pedals on the aircraft, you push them in, release, push them in to put the brakes on, then you push that way and release the brakes. And I would try to release the brakes, and I didn't have enough energy. I was shaking so bad I couldn't release the brakes. So I took both feet on one pedal to release that pedal, then I take both of them to release the other one. But I didn't have enough strength in one foot to do it. And so I said, shoot, I got to go out. And so I taxied that son going out, knew what I was going to call in, did all the preliminary stuff. And I was going out to the runway to take off. And I was driving out to the runway. I looked over on the side and I saw Rathall standing over there with his arm, looking at him like, with his hands folded like this. And I said, "Oh, USAF." That gave me the energy. I saw him shoot. All the energy I ever had came back, and I drove that sucker on out there, pulled it around, called, and took off like a champ. And I knew he was over there looking. And I said, "You look all you want. Now they got to wait for me to come back in an hour. I got to fly an hour and come back and shoot." And quite naturally, you do what you want in that hour. But I didn't know nothing about this airplane. I wanted to know what the stalling point was. So I tried for stalling, tried for that. And so I said, "I know when you're stalling, I've got to feel this thing out." And I went, and so my hour's up. I come in perfect. And Lundberg says, "You did everything I told you to do as I told you to do it, when I told you to do it." He says, "I could just mark it down. What you're gonna do next." He watched me come in, just talk, so you did it exactly each time, each step. And I brought this sucker in, put it in, greased it right in on down, got down. And that was the beginning of flying the P-40. Then we were gonna go to get out of this prejudice. This prejudice down at Tuskegee, we're gonna be transferred to Selfridge Field, Detroit, Michigan. By the way, I skipped a lot. Didn't really tell you that in between this time, the 99th Fighter Squadron,
Right.
the whites on there decided that they had to get out there and go overseas. I didn't say that, but anyway, because they got tired of their people getting killed overseas, and they wanted to know why these blacks could fly around here at town, because I said we went home on weekends and all this stuff, and they want to know why we still around when their husbands and their brothers and all that was getting killed overseas, and we were still in the States flying around. But in the meantime, we were still in that crazy situation there in Tuskegee. Now we're going to Detroit, Michigan, going north. And so we were happy as anything. And then we got to Detroit, Michigan, and wow, that was it. I went downtown to a bar, and I was sitting there, and I saw this lady coming in, sit there, and I sat there and watched her order drink. She ordered a rum and Coke. I didn't know nothing about no rum and Coke. I didn't know nothing about no mixer. I knew I took my little half a pint and went around the back of the building, the toilet, and drank it. Down in South Carolina, we didn't know about no rum and Coke, the mixer. So I said, well, I can't let them know how stupid I am coming from the South. So I ordered rum and Coke. And I drank rum and Coke for a year before I learned there was something else to drink other than rum and Coke. But in the meantime, we found that our base out there did. You want me to go on through the rest of the deal? Where?
Yeah, and
Coleman.
I do want to hear about Coleman, and
Coleman.
would also like to hear about your arrival in Italy.
In Italy,
Yeah.
Okay. And so, okay, then we were at Tuskegee, and the commanding officer was Coleman, not Coleman Young here. The white commander was commander of the base. He brought with him more prejudice than he ever had in Tuskegee. He didn't want. One day they had a picnic, and excuse me, let me get this thing when I talk. This stuff comes out. And he was drinking out there, and he got pretty drunk, and they brought him back to the base, and he was in his office there, and the officer today, the OD, he called, tell him to get him a driver to send him home. He and his little son, he had his boy with him, about 12, 13 years old. And he said that's one good thing he did. He knew he was too drunk to drive, so he called for the OD to send for a staff car to send him home. And when the staff car came to pick him up to take him home, it was a black guy driving the staff car. So Coleman come down off of it, stood around, and walked around, and turned around and saw this black boy standing in front of his staff car, and he shot him right in the stomach. Basic commander shot this black driver, and so the driver was running around, and he's swimming around, and finally got the gun out of this guy's drunk hand, and they took him on home. But the other black, cause all such clamor going there to send this boy to the hospital and all that stuff, because here's the commander shooting a soldier, and let's see, I don't know what all come out of this thing, but along that same time, shortly after that, it had no connections in it, but they had this riot in Detroit. This riot broke out up there.
44 or 43?
44. Still 43.
The race riot.
Yeah, it's still 43.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
At Belle Isle.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, and because this is June, August, September, it's 44.
Right.
And so there was all, but they had no connection with the whole thing. Is that I'll cut this down without going into too many details, other than this colonel then was getting ready to lose command. That's when Benjamin O. Davis Jr., who had taken the 9th Fighter Squadron over to North Africa, was coming back. He left the 99th under the command of Spanky Roberts. I'll get Spanky's full name for you. Spanky Roberts' name. And B.O. Davis came back to the 332nd Fighter Squadron in Selfridge Field to pick us up and take those other 4 squadrons of us back overseas. And but this Colonel Coleman, who was confined to quarters, had his court martial, so they reduced him to his permanent rank. See, then they had different officers who had a temporary rank and a permanent rank, and which we blacks didn't get to that much. But the white officers, some of them was running around there, first lieutenant, but they'd got these other temporary ranks on up to colonels and all that stuff. So they just reduced him back down to captain, right, and separated him as a captain, honorably, discharged after shooting this man. Mm-hmm. And but therefore, then we were getting ready then to go overseas, and that's when they picked up the P-39. Our P-40s were about wore out. We just wore them out because those old P-40s were kind of on the last leg. They had done their duty in China with the Flying Tigers. They even had the tiger mouths painted on them and all that stuff, and tiger victories on the side of them. So they were wore out when we had them. But we had good mechanics, and our mechanics could take that dang thing and pair some pliers and building wire and make it fly.
You had a lot of success abroad, in Italy and North Africa.
We're headed there now.
Okay, very good.
Okay, we're getting ready now. We're going to this P-39s. We had to fly that over from Oscoda, Michigan, and I'm trying to think what they call that place now. It's still the same town, but they called it nothing. The bases got a different name now. We call it Oscoda, Michigan. I'll tell you the name of it in a minute. I've heard of it. Anyway, we did our aerial gunnery over Lake Huron. Mm-hmm. That's when we picked up the name the Big Drink.
Oh, okay.
So we don't call it lake, we call it the Big Drink, because we somehow we didn't like big drinks. We didn't like a lot of water. And so we did and on Christmas Eve, in '44, was when we went to Patrick Henry, Virginia, to board this Liberty ship to get ready to go overseas. That's when we were all going to go overseas to Italy. From Patrick Henry, we went down there, and it rained, it was raining, it was raining. But anyway, we all got on the ship, and out we went, 125 ship convoy, and old Liberty ships. And we got going out there, and the submarines coming around, and the destroyers flopping around, dropping depth charges all around. We could hear the things hitting, and we were all wondering what was going on. But it was a long time out there. We was out there about 25 days, I think. 25? I think it was 25. 125 ship convoy. I got that 25 mixed up with how many days we were out there on the ocean. I'm not sure of that. I've looked that up.
Right.
And then we went into Bari, Italy. That's it, right on the boot hill, right on the hill. And so we offloaded there, and V.O. Davis didn't come in yet. He was out in the ocean. His ship lost the rudder, so they were trying to get it straight up to come in, and then he come in, and from Bari, Italy, is when we got our gear off, and we began to walk up into Italy. We walked up to Monte Cabino, and there we pitched our tents and everything. We began to get the feel of the thing with this old P-39, and then we moved from Monte Cabino up to Naples, which we call Napoli, Capodichino. And there we had the job of patrolling the harbor of the shipping going in from Rock of Gibraltar to up into Naples, Italy, on the Mediterranean Sea. And so we used those old P-39s there, and we were still in the 12th Air Force, and then the 15th Air Force come in and took over, and we couldn't do anything with that P-39 because it would go up to about 17,000 feet, and the Ju-88 from Germany would fly all over and take all the pictures they wanted to take. Nothing we could do about it but see them fly over head and take the pictures, whatever they wanted to do. Because if we turned and shot, that old P-39 had this 37 millimeter cannon flying through the nose of it, and anytime you shot it, it lost 20 miles of airspeed, kickback, and so and it wouldn't.
I have a question, because I want to make sure that we end with Lincoln, your presence in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we only have about 3 minutes. But basically, it was a remarkable achievement over there. Over 1,500 missions.
Yeah.
And you only lost about 98 pilots. That's
right.
Really significant.
Right. And
if you could speak to that first, and then we'll end with your travels to Nebraska.
Yeah. Well, now we over there. We got the got rid of the P-39s, and what they did, they gave the P-39s to the fascist group. The fascists had pilots flying Mach 205, and that's what their Italian plane, and they had their equipment to keep it going was in northern Italy. See, they had a North Italy and South Italy, the peons and the more progressive big shots. Mechanics were the north, but southern Italy were the peons, and that's where we were down there. And so then they gave this fascist group those dang P-39, where they were great pilots in that market. They could do all kinds of acrobatic rolling, different diving and spinning, and all kinds of acrobatics they did. And so we gave them that P-39, and that down there P-39 with the center of gravity behind them didn't work so well. Killed them all except for about 3 of them.
Right.
Yeah, they would all crash them out, and so they weren't any good. So then they took the remaining 3 of them and gave them to the 52nd Fighter Group, which were flying P-51s next to us. And then they gave us the P-47 so we could go overseas, and we'd go over the Mediterranean Sea and past Yugoslavia for our attacks. And when we got past Yugoslavia, we was out of gas in the P-47 jug, so we had to turn around and come back. That's when the white boys said we was afraid to fight. That's when he came, sent back to Washington, D.C., said to get rid of our outfit because we wouldn't fight. And so, but B.O. Davis came to Washington, D.C. and told him with his people that supported him that they give us something to fight with and something to fight at, we could fight. But we had the P-47 jug with no particular target. We just fly the thing over there, over the Mediterranean Sea and back. And so then they decided to give us the P-51. Then they gave us the P-51. And when they gave us the P-51, we could take that P-51, go all the way to Berlin and back, all around. We could go anywhere in that P-51. We could fly and beat. Consequently, then we had air superiority because the Germans wouldn't even come up anywhere near us.
Right.
And where the black pilots was around, German fighters would scatter away, wasn't there? That's when we got our fame. Although we lost about 96, 98 pilots because of weather, and 1 or 2 for enemy action, but most of it was weather that we lost most of our pilots.
You had those kind of casualties at all kind of wars.
Right.
Accidental.
It was weather, and that's because flying over the Alps was a real trick.
We could easily keep going. You've had a very impressive military career over 20 years. And where I'd like to close is with your presence in Nebraska, because you came to Nebraska in the 60s and was one of the first 3 African-American teachers.
Right.
And I was wondering if you can wrap it up by telling us about your experience in Lincoln, Nebraska, what kind of obstacles you encountered, and what does it feel like being a hero in Nebraska?
Not a hero.
You're considered a hero in African American circles here.
Survive.
A survivor.
Well, a survivor. Well, I got out of the service in '45 and went to supply and logistics school in Tuskegee. So then I went back and joined the outfit in supply in Lockburn, Ohio. In Lockburn, that's when Truman said we're going to integrate the armed forces. And I don't want no more than one black pilot on any one base in the United States. That didn't mean any one squadron, it meant one base, a whole base. And so I left, was shipped from Columbus, Ohio to Travis Air Force Base, it is now. I'm trying to think of the name it was then. It's Travis now. Travis Air Force Base is there. And I was the only black pilot, black officer there on this base for a while. And they gave me a job that I'd never heard of before. And I'm gonna try to hurry this through because it's funny. I was fleet service officer. You know what fleet service is?
I have a strange suspicion.
It isn't awful. I didn't have the slightest what it was. I was fleet service officer. Fleet service officer to clean the toilet things off the airplanes and put the food on there for the any serving. I guess that's what they call them still. I don't know, but I didn't know any idea about it.
Really interesting story, but we have to end. We're over time.
But give me a minute.
Okay, go.
Quickly.
Go.
Okay, then boom, left fleet service, and I went to be the only black officer in Pacific Air Division, Honolulu, Hawaii. That's where I was real great, gotten good with the general and colonel, and I left that and went to Howard University as an instructor in ROTC, and from there I got into Denver, Colorado, in gunnery school, photo interpretation. From there, I came up through Goose Bay and then sent here as deputy base commander of the base here at Lincoln. And I came in here and I was the highest ranking thing on Lincoln Air Force Base for a while there when I walked around. And so they'd send me downtown to see the meeting for the base commander. And when I walk in, you can hear a pin drop. Everybody there stop. He goes, "Here, who are you to come down here?" And then on the other hand there, I tried to find a place to live. It was hard to find a place to live because they had us all grouped in a T Street somewhere, they called it, down there. And I called it T Street, and I fell out with them, and I found out that's what they called it, but I couldn't call it that.
Oh, really?
When I called it T Street, it was wrong. But the people who living down there said, "This is our home. This is our home. Don't talk about my home." But other than that, and my kids was in school, and I was going to pull out of Lincoln High School. And the principal, Bogart, wanted to know, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to teach school back at Springfield, Massachusetts." Had the job already set up. He said, "Shoot, you can teach right here while I leave. Teach school here at Lincoln High School if I wanted to go." But I had no intention of staying here. But I learned years ago never turn a job down. And so I took the job, and so when school opened, I put my kids in school, and they liked it. We got along pretty well. And then I taught that first year, and I've been here 37 years, trying to get out of Lincoln. And but Lincoln is not a bad place, but don't kid yourself. This is headquarters Ku Klux Klan, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thank you very much. And on that note, we'll end.
This is the headquarters for the Ku Klux Klan. It beats Mississippi and South Carolina as far as prejudice is concerned at that time.
Thank you.